Hey Internet, it's Vadim here for Rocket 6923, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about not this video that you happen to be watching right now, but parts 1 and 2. That's right, there's a prequel to this video. But look, don't worry, you don't need to watch it to enjoy this one. That's why I'm here right now to fill you in and keep you up to speed. So, the video addresses and debunks arguments made by online right-wing meathead chuds, Actual Justice Warrior, and Nuance Bro. They both made reaction videos to a heated debate between Tim Pool and Actual Justice Warrior versus the Majority Report's Emma Vigeland. And during the debate, Emma kinda just triggered the ever-living out of Tim when she pointed out the well-established fact that the perpetrator of the 2023 Allen, Texas mass shooting happened to be a neo-Nazi who watched Tim's show.
Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now? I don't know if you are intentionally trying to just generate clips that are nonsensical or you're just really that stupid.
Oh man.
Look, if you want to play a game of nonsense statements for political brownie points, feel free to do so. But I'll say it again.
Tim, I didn't mean to upset you.
We're having a conversation about scientific research, data, and then you go, your show's for neo-Nazis. It's like, okay, dude, are you stupid?
He then went on to accuse Emma of sabotaging the audio of his incredibly lame Nickelback ripoff band, which was pretty weird.
Yeah, right. So go live in your grifter echo chamber where you guys can play songs with bad audio and then say, whoopsie.
I'm sorry, that audio thing really upset you.
Tim was not a happy Beanie Baby at all, but we got some pretty sweet memes out of it.
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Anyhow, building off of points made in that debate, Rocket goes on to correct a whole lot of misinformation, not just from these three dorks, but also from their close personal friend, notorious alt-right journalist Lauren Southern, who, like Tim, has also been accused of influencing neo-Nazi mass shooters. Small world, huh? Rocket dives deep into Southern's past, which, by the way, includes heavy propagandizing for the neo-Nazi hate group Generation Identity, and he discusses the huge part she and friends like her besties Martin and Brittany Sellner played in spreading the baseless, super racist, and anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, the Great Replacement, which was not only central to Generation Identity's core philosophy, but also happened to be mentioned within the title of the Christchurch Shooters Manifesto, which he cited as the key inspiration for the attack. And finally, Rocket demonstrates that, just like Poole, Southern denies basic facts about the right's deep connection to far-right extremism, and constantly lies, especially when it comes to her personal role in spreading the sorts of toxic misinformation and hysteria that radicalizes a portion of her audience and sometimes even inspires terrorists like the Christchurch and Texas shooters to commit the horrific acts they're responsible for. So there you go. There's so much more Rocket covers than just that. You really should check it out, especially if you dig this one, but that's pretty much all you need to know for this video right here. But hey guys, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And by the way, if you really enjoy this vid and would like to see more, maybe throw a little something to Rocket's PayPal, link down below. Also, hey, if you happen to be a subscriber, follower, whatever of mine, and you've been wondering if I am getting back to making videos, why yes I am. Just keep your eyes peeled, people. Hey, it's Vadim, coming to an internet near you. And with that said, I'm gonna hand you over to Mr. Rocket himself. Later!
Thanks, hey, it's Vadim. And now, I guess it's on to...
Part 3. Does Tim Pool's show appeal to neo-Nazis? We will enter into Part 3 by revisiting this heated exchange from the culture war.
Who was that one guy who watched Majority Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
But this is exactly why people don't like your show, okay?
I think people like our show.
Yeah, maybe ask why some of these higher profile personalities and networks won't have Sam on anymore. And he can
they're
cry.
Afraid of him.
Oh, they're afraid of him. How about it's because you just claimed that my show appeals to Nazis?
So, this is the exchange from the culture war that everyone keeps on talking about. But is this a nasty smear from Emma, as Sean puts it? Or is this an uncomfortable truth that his fan base just isn't willing to accept? we'll look at a number of things to help us answer this question. And a good place to start is by asking, what kind of company does Tim Pool keep? If this infamous photo taken of Tim in the summer of 2017 is any indication, then the answer would definitely be a whole lot of f***ing Nazis. Because there's literally 7 white nationalist/fascist knuckle-dragging Nazi jerks in this one photo alone, possibly 8, considering we have no idea who this dork is in the aviator glasses right here. Now, we don't have the time to dive into the histories of each and every one of these neo-fascist hate-mongers, but feel free to pause the video and read up on the ones I won't be personally covering. Their rap sheets in the world of racist far-right extremism are all impressive and certainly could justify long segments of their own. So it's not hard at all to imagine why Tim's hiding. He clearly didn't want to be seen with these people. Now, I will acknowledge that yes, this photo has been cited many times before in videos, articles, and Twitter threads you may have seen discussing Pool and his close ties to the alt-right. But it's crucial we start here, because it needs to be said that this is exactly the sort of company Tim has been keeping from the start, and as we'll soon see, things haven't changed much at all. But hey, first, let's get to know a few of Tim's white supremacist lunch buddies, starting with this loser, named after my least favorite cake, Baked Alaska. Here he is being praised by the former Grand Wizard of the KKK himself, David Duke.
And by the way,
Live with the red elephants.
With me. Baked Alaska, I honor you for your courage in this event too.
I love you, Dr. Duke.
Now listen,
Thank
when
you
we
so
get
much.
back to the park, well, we love you too. We really respect you.
And here he is later that very same day.
You will not replace us! You will not replace us! We're proud to be white! We're proud to be white, brother! Proud to be white! We're proud to be white! Hail victory! Hell yeah! White lives matter! White lives matter!
You know, call me crazy, but I'm starting to get the impression these guys might have a thing against Jews. Next, there's James Alsop, who was frequently at Alaska's side throughout the infamous March at Charlottesville.
We're live here, James Alsop, Brittany Venti, we got Red Elephant.
And can be overheard here, fangirling over David Duke's presence at the rally as well.
Did you see Dr. Duke?
I did. Was he here?
David Duke was the Dukester himself.
That's notorious racist evil goblin Nick Fuentes he's talking to there, by the way.
Runs the media. Globalists. Time to kill the globalists. I want people that run CNN to be arrested and deported or hanged.
More on him later. But for now, here's James saying insanely bigoted things about African immigrants.
If you really want diversity, just move to South Africa and you'll get all the diversity you want. You also get, and beaten and killed, like murdered with a power drill, but like, hey, it's diverse.
Now, although James and Baked Alaska aren't currently making waves like they once did within the alt-right community, their inclusion will allow me to highlight an important point I'll be making later. But before we move on, I'd like you to have a listen to a clip from this interview Tim conducted with Alaska here, which was likely filmed somewhere within the time that this photograph was taken.
So let's cut to the chase and go straight for the I guess the political accusations.
Yeah.
Are the people coming here Nazis?
No, absolutely.
White nationalists?
You will not replace us!
I'm not a white nationalist.
All right. So we'll try again.
Okay.
Are these people coming here racists?
Which people?
Like the Trump people.
Trump people? No, absolutely.
Are you a racist?
No.
No racism in Charlottesville? Well, then maybe you should get the fuck out of here later.
We'll check back in with this interview again, but for now, let's talk about the lone woman in attendance at the neo-Nazi sausage party, Brittany Pettibone. Perhaps you recognize her from earlier, as she and Southern were practically inseparable during Lauren's days with Generation Identity. She participated in all of GI's Defend Europe missions you saw earlier, and also their most notorious stunt in the Mediterranean Sea, where they harassed NGO ships attempting to rescue migrants from drowning. By the way, you might know Brittany better by her more current name, Brittany Selner. That's right, she's married to Martin Selner, and I regret to inform you, they're breeding. Given that fact, I feel like I don't have to work hard to convince you she's neo-Nazi adjacent herself, although I do think it's worth taking a quick listen to her podcast host at the time, Tara McCarthy.
Yeah, like we all intuitively know that there are certain groups of people who have a higher crime rate, who are shit at doing anything, who can't turn up on time to places, who are extremely unreliable and make mistakes all the time and expect to get bailed out for it. They do such things as crapping in their own water supply, which they still do.
Yeah.
Which we're still spending millions and millions of dollars in foreign aid and trying to educate them not to do.
Holy crap! I've seen KKK cross burnings that were less racist than that. Now keep in mind that by the time this photo was taken, Brittany and Tara had interviewed countless alt-right extremists and self-described white nationalists on their Virtue of the West podcast. Yet in spite of all that to draw from, as well as her explicit endorsements of and participation with Generation Identity, here's how Tim finished up their interview.
So I guess the last questions, right? So you are not advocating for a white ethno-state in the United States? You don't think that
No.
white people should be in charge and that there should be a purging or an ethnic cleansing?
No, I don't. I've never advocated for this. What I
Are
do...
you racist?
Brittany is clearly lying through her teeth here, and it's incredibly hard to believe that Tim doesn't know this, but that's pretty much the extent of his questioning. Great pushback there, Tim. Now keep these 2 bits of hard-hitting journalism in mind for later, but perhaps a better way of getting to know the company that Tim Pool keeps is by looking at Tim's show itself. So we'll take a look at some of his past guests, and we'll start with none other than Lauren Southern, who has made at least 8 appearances. Now I know you're sick to death of hearing about her. However, I had to include her to drive home the fact that she hasn't changed one bit.
Let me tell you, right now, I have not changed one bit.
In fact, she's recently made multiple videos claiming that she has been proven correct on everything she said about the Great Replacement.
People are waking up and the alarm bells are going off of stuff that a lot of people, like myself, tried to warn them about 10 years ago but weren't heard because we were right too early. The Irish people will disappear. They will be replaced pretty instantly if the current levels of immigration keep up. I was right about all of this occurring. I'm not happy that I've been vindicated. I wish I wasn't. I wish everyone was laughing at me now.
But what's all the more damning about these clips is they were all uploaded onto a channel called Tenet Media that Tim Pool created content for as well.
Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine.
And it was recently revealed by the U.S. Department of Justice that the entire venture was a disinformation campaign funded by Russian dark money.
The indictment issued by the U.S. Justice Department yesterday, its focus an alleged illegal money trail that it says connects alt-right influencers to Vladimir Putin. The influencers include Tim Pool, Lauren Southern, Dave Rubin, and Benny Johnson.
And speaking of Tenet Media, next up is Lauren Chen, who just so happened to own the channel and made a name for herself defending infamous white supremacists like Richard Spencer.
It sounds a lot like your problem with the interview was that Richard Spencer came across too well, that he represented his points too reasonably. And I mean, has it occurred to you that maybe he isn't exactly what the media has been trying to push?
As well as other insane far-right weirdo freaks, like the banned tween-age YouTuber, Soph.
But you see, Soph, the latest person to be given the axe, she's different. She's special.
If you think the proliferation of sexual degeneracy hasn't been orchestrated, I think you're blind. I don't even need to tell you what kind of people make up pornographers.
The majority of topics covered by Tenet Media revolved around issues meant to stir anxiety in white Americans, such as the threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, subjects that Lauren Chen, of course, often discussed herself.
57% of the residents belong to a visible minority group. This is unbelievable. And, you know, obviously, if you click this, you see the title. I don't know how else to describe this level of immigration aside from a replacement.
Then there's Jack Posobiec, who is one of Tim's most frequent guests in the past several years. The SPLC has described him as a frequent collaborator with white supremacists, neo-fascists, and anti-Semites. Jack denies these charges, but his extensive backlog of embarrassingly racist tweets speak for themselves. They're filled to the brim with anti-Semitic dog whistles, as well as praise for Richard Spencer and hate groups like Identity Europa. Also, take special notice of how in this series of tweets invoking the alt-right means hashtag, he employs words like we and us. This makes it clear that he's not simply defending the alt-right, he's explicitly including himself among them.
Nah, dude, I'm punk rock, baby. I'm punk rock to hardcore punk rock.
And then there's
the mighty Sargon of Akkad,
whose extensive history of collaborating with Tim is only overshadowed by his history of saying extremely stupid things.
Kanye West is a really good example. Unbelievably successful, well behaved, I think is a fairly good way of putting it. He doesn't seem to be constantly breaking the law.
What the Much like Tim Pool, Sargon of Akkad, also known as Carl Benjamin, has introduced many of the far-right's most popular figures to the world and has championed their most heinous conspiracies. Here he is defending the neo-Nazi that ran over Heather Heyer in Charlottesville.
I remember when Charlottesville happened. I mean, they were apoplectic about these violent right-wing maniacs, and then when the car thing happened, it was just like a gift from God for them, because that's the evidence.
Just to jump in on the car thing, as I understand it, I thought Heather Hayes or Hare or whatever her name was, I thought she died of a heart attack.
Yes, it looks like what happened is that he was shocked by seeing the car crash happening and had a heart attattack. It's really sort of. I know, it's horrible, but it does seem a very dramatic reaction to a car crash.
It's more that the alt-right are being blamed for someone having a heart attack, and suddenly the alt-right has murdered someone.
And then there's Candace Owens, who has made at least 3 appearances. And here she is listening to her own words at a congressional hearing where she legitimizes Adolf Hitler.
I don't know Miss Owens. I'm not going to characterize her. I'm going to let her own words do the talking.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. He was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
It should note that Candace was also mentioned in the Christchurch Shooters Manifesto. Her inclusion was more than likely a sardonic racist joke meant to be taken ironically, but even if that is the case, Owens had tweeted a great deal about falling birth rates and great replacement nonsense. Before the shooting, the reference is oddly fitting. And then there's Elijah Schaffer, who recently claimed that racism isn't just okay, it actually makes you a better person.
I want to re-educate people into understanding that racism doesn't make you a bad person. Mm-hmm. It makes you a better friend, a better husband, a better father, and it makes you a better person. It's like humane. It's like I'm carrying a gun, and so if I go around that group of black guys, I'm going to kill them. And so I'm actually, by being racist, saving black lives because they're not dead because I chose to not engage.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Brazenly hateful commentary like that is simply the norm for Schaffer. He openly posts Nazi iconography, has spoken plainly of his hate for Chinese people, and has even gone on record to say that he thinks killing trans kids is hilarious. By now, I'm sure you've gotten the point. The extreme and often blatantly hateful nature of these guests aren't at all unusual for Timcast. In fact, they're just the standard. But we should take a quick moment now to point out that applies every bit as much to those behind the scenes as well. For instance, there's Hannah Claire Brimllo, who recently ended a 3-year stint as a writer for Tim, as well as one of his most frequent guest co-hosts.
Do you think that Mexico poses enough of a threat to American lives to be worth invading at any point?
I mean, it's certainly more of a threat to us than Ukraine.
Right.
Now, if that question's insanely racist overtone seemed at all surprising, it shouldn't be. Because in Hannah's case, it runs in the family. You see, her father is the influential white nationalist Peter Brimllo, who founded VDare, an anti-immigration hate site whose contributor list has been described by the SPLC as a Rolodex of the most prominent pseudo-intellectual racists and anti-Semites, which, come to think of it, is a pretty great summary of Timcast as well. Both VDare and Brimllo have long sought to end birthright citizenship for immigrants, which Hannah often brought up on Timcast as well.
But I do want to ask a question about immigration. If elected, would you end birthright citizenship?
Birthright citizenship, I don't know. I would have to look at that. I mean, I think isn't there a constitutional provision that said if you're born in this country that you're a citizen? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think birthright citizenship incentivizes illegal immigration.
Well, I would shut down the border. Let me put it that way.
There you go.
And lastly, here's a fun little fact. VDare was also frequented by, you guessed it, the neo-Nazi shooter from Texas. Next, Tim's co-host Ann Crossland, also known as Moonlord.
What is the Moonlord?
That's, I guess, his nickname.
Is thought of by many as the least offensive member of the crew. But even he has his fair share of truly out-of-this-world moments, like in this clip, while responding to Kanye West's interview on InfoWars.
Crazy it is Kanye's waking up a bunch of Jewish people and pointing them to God. Like last night on that Gavin McInnes interview, I'll explain it. There's going to be a revelation within Judaism and probably all the major religions on earth that there's going to be some sort of a transformation where people come back to the faith. And Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
I just have to say, Ian, this may be one of the most insane things I've ever heard you say.
Sure, man.
Say what you will, but Moonlord's ability to come off even more anti-Semitic than Kanye?
There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler. A lot of things.
Is downright impressive. And lastly, let's take a close look at a few of Tim's producers over the years, starting with the current producer and booker of the Culture War, Lisa Elizabeth, when she's not busy being a raging homophobe on podcasts with titles like No More Gay Orgies, Just Stop Please.
Complete degeneracy so that it tears down the family unit and then they can just implement communism in their Marxist utopia, but that's fine.
Or being a raging transphobe while in conversation with neo-Nazi ringleader Richard Spencer.
But they have to go and interact with other kids in real life, and I got these jerk-offs next door hanging trans flags out their freaking window, okay?
You might just want to move or something.
She's constantly spreading toxic Islamophobia and great replacement hysteria on Twitter. Are we starting to see a pattern here? Before you answer, though, allow me to introduce you to Cassandra McDonald, formerly Cassandra Fairbanks. She's Tim's previous booker, editor-in-chief, and longtime co-host. She, too, has close ties with VDare, attends white nationalist gatherings, sponsored by Nick Fuentes, and even speaks openly of her appreciation of fascism and brutal dictators like Augusto Pinochet, while endorsing both civil war and a hostile takeover of Mexico.
I am so pro-divorce. I'm 100% down for it, and I'm so glad that I live in West Virginia, which would be red as hell. I am so down for that, except we need a port on the Pacific.
We could work out a deal with Mexico.
Or we could just take over some. I'm turning imperialist
I don't
right now.
Okay, Miss Pinochet.
Some of my thoughts lately would make Pinochet blush, to be honest.
That was how
I've gotten to the point.
The Civil War started, was secession.
Yeah.
Don't you think that would happen again?
Maybe.
Well, another thing people need to realize
has to.
Now, I really don't know what's more damning. The fact that these are obviously more than just edgy jokes and memes, or that, yet again, the Texas shooter has something huge in common with one of Tim's crew. There's way too many awful things about her to cram into just one video, but perhaps the most repulsive thing I've come across is this description of her, written by former camerawoman and producer for Tim Pool, Emily Molly. Here she recounts seeing Cassandra McDonald at the 2016 alt-right celebration party, The Deplorable, along with her date, the notorious alt-right leader, Richard Spencer.
Hail Trump! Hail victory!
This scene will always be stuck in my mind. Fairbanks in a red dress, Richard Spencer descending the stairs in a suit. They weren't just friendly with one another, they were being physically intimate. Fairbanks' reputation precedes her in this area, but I was still stunned.
That just might be the most disgusting thing I've ever read. By the way, Spencer, too, has been a guest on Timcast. Oh, and he also received a donation from the Christchurch killer. Funny how so many people in Tim's sphere end up influencing mass shooters. Oh look, here's another one. Nick Fuentes.
Hey everybody,
Welcome to the Gay Homo Show. Hitler, true, he was making Germany great again in his own special way, in a more classical way.
Maybe you recall Nick and James Alsop fangirling over former KKK wizard David Duke from earlier.
Did you see Dr. Duke? I did. Was he here? David Duke was the Dukester himself.
And since then, the Dukester has become quite the fan of Nick as well.
So you're David Duke?
Yes.
Okay. What brings you out here? This is the Groyper.
Support Nick and working to save our country and save us from Jewish supremacism.
Are you friends with Nick?
I consider him a comrade in the fight
Gotcha.
for our people.
Like Tim, Nick Fuentes' sphere of influence is wide and ever expanding. From Baked Alaska and Brittany Sellner to Alex Jones and Kanye to countless far-right politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar, and even Donald Trump. And of course, all the way to crypto-Nazi trolls like Elijah Schaffer and Hannah Pearl Davis.
Now really, I'm not trying to be rude, but why can't we talk about the
Who were both, I promise, this is the last time I'm gonna say this. Survey said. You guessed it. Admired by the Texas shooter as well. Let's listen to a small sample of this conversation he posted on his social media between Nick and Pearl to see why he might have been a fan.
What did he even say about Hitler? I can't even remember. It was something crazy, though.
Something crazy.
But maybe
awesome.
maybe it would make sense now that I've talked to you. What did he say?
He said that Hitler did good things also. Alex Jones said, yeah, I guess everybody has something good to offer. And Ye said, especially Hitler.
I'm not laughing. YouTube. That's not funny. Push back.
Following this interview, Pearl Davis was rightfully shamed into deleting it from YouTube. But the 5-part conversation still exists on Twitter. Now Pearl's reach is massive, with nearly 2 million subscribers on YouTube alone. And so watching clips like this, I can't help but think of what Emma said here.
You just claimed that my show appeals to Nazis, which it clearly doesn't. Because this show is predominantly like moderate libertarian leaning types.
No,
but
you
don't
say
even
that,
watch
and
it.
that you say that because you're trying to draw a line and make the really far right people that watch your show feel like their positions are a little bit more close to the mainstream than they actually are.
Emma couldn't have hit the nail on the head any harder if she tried. By purely giving many of these figures airtime, Tim helps usher people like Fuentes into the mainstream, but it goes even further than that. Remember these interviews from earlier? Well, they both highlight 2 vital ways in which he actively helps far-right extremists like Brittany and Alaska achieve their goals in the culture war.
To me, it sounds like you're just kind of a traditional Republican.
Yeah,
traditional values, Christianity,
I don't really like
right wing.
even.
Of course, we know that Brittany Sellner was anything but a traditional normal conservative at the time, but Tim had no qualms with whitewashing her extremely racist and reactionary nature. And let's have a look at this moment, where Tim asks Baked Alaska about the alt-righters giving the Nazi salute at rallies.
But the way I see it is, regardless of whether or not you're joking, the average American's going to see that and think it's real.
Yeah, I agree, and so that's why I've stopped doing. I've never done the Roman salute. There's no footage of me doing that. I swear to God. But that's why I would say to other people out there, doing a Nazi salute, whether or not it's a joke or you're trolling, I've tinkered with trolling and jokes, but I don't think that accomplishes anything.
Okay, I could go on for a while about how strange it is that Alaska's biggest problem isn't that it's hateful or needlessly vindictive, and that he's clearly only concerned about optics, with no care for actually addressing the hate within his community. But holy crap, this moment right here?
The average American's going to see that and think it's real.
Yeah, I agree, and so that's why I've stopped doing. I've never done the Roman salute. There's no footage of me doing that. I swear to God.
I've never seen a clearer case of a Nazi just straight up telling on himself in my life. He's just caught in 4K right there. Any remotely competent interviewer who actually cared about exposing hate would push back right here, but not a peep from Tim. Incredible. Now, it really doesn't matter whether you attribute Tim's behavior in these examples to complicity or idiocy. Either way, the outcome is the same. Their hateful ideas go unchallenged, their images are whitewashed, and their ideas seem
a little bit more close to the mainstream than they actually are.
And that's why Nazis like these, as well as the Texas shooter, love Tim Pool's show, because he's a vector for far-right extremists everywhere. Kind of like a 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but for reactionary domestic terrorism. Tim doesn't have to agree or disagree with the lunatics and bigots he has on his show. Either way, they have the opportunity to push their hate to an audience of millions every night on his podcast. Often, their views will be supported and even pushed further right by Tim and his co-hosts. But no matter what, they get a platform with practically no pushback whatsoever and the Timcast IRL seal of approval. But all these guests are actually just a small sample of the evidence that support Emma's claim. Countless statements Pool has made over the years are every bit as dangerous as anything you might hear from his very worst guests.
We have this from NBC News. What we know about the slain Texas Mall massacre suspect. Authorities said he was a suspected neo-Nazi sympathizer. So, I mean, the first thing I just want to say before we get into any of the politics from either side is, yeah, we don't want these things to happen. We want these things to stop. We need to figure out what the issue is in our society, in our culture. And I'll put it simply, I think it's multiculturalism. And not the idea that people of all different types are holding hands on the rainbow. It's that you have different communities stacked on top of each other and next to each other with wildly different views, and they don't like each other. And then people who are crazy will do crazy things.
In my mind, this clip really says it all. Yes, at the end, he seems to write everything off as crazy people doing crazy things. But the real culprit he's naming here is multiculturalism. He's painting it as an awful thing and then more or less stating that violence, such as that perpetrated by the shooter, is an inevitable consequence of too much multiculturalism, which is exactly why terrorists like the ones we've discussed today committed their acts in the first place. And all said, mind you, just a day after Tim had foolishly called it a false flag and had been proven wrong. Maybe instead of offering weak-ass apologia for Tim's words and actions, sycophants like Actual Justice Warrior and Nuance Bro should ask themselves why Tim's reply here sounds as though it could easily fit into so many of these great replacement-obsessed shooters' manifestos. There's so many other equally vile statements of Tim's that could justify long videos of their own. Defenders of Tim will often say that he's just an inquisitive observer who is unaware of the activities and inner workings of the far-right fringe groups his guests represent. He frequently pleads ignorance himself, as he did right here in 2019, on the topic of the Great Replacement. But should we believe him?
You know, you've got the media and the left talking about conspiracy theories and the Great Replacement or whatever that is. I'm not super familiar with whatever that idea is supposed to be. I don't know if it's some like white nationalist thing where they think like the white people are being replaced or something like that. I don't know about any of that stuff.
You've got people on the alt-right that are they're saying the Great Replacement, things like this, and they're upset. And they're upset. You know, they're angry white people aren't reproducing and they want a white ethnostate, whatever. So this idea that somehow the Great Replacement is the problem, like that migrants are the problem, it's not true.
Of course not.
So,
No.
Certainly these people could say like, oh, if migrants come in, they're replacing us. Like, yeah, technically.
Basically, every top trend on Twitter right now is about New Zealand and Christchurch. There's a lot of information that's coming out. For those of you that aren't familiar with what happened, a man with an arsenal, a massive, with guns, stormed into a mosque, and I believe he killed 49 people. The whole thing was live streamed. The video is available everywhere. I've seen it. I've also looked through his manifesto.